Good day, everyone. I'm Richard Fink. This is the Injured Workers Legal Side podcast with Richard and Paul.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Taylor. I'm a paralegal with a specialization in workers' compensation and human rights law. If you want to reach either of us to be part of our podcast, you can contact us through the links below. This week's topic, we're first going to talk about the WSIB strike, which seems to be on everybody's mind. And then we're going to talk about the age 65 issue. Let me briefly explain what I mean by the age 65 issue. Prior to 1990, when a worker was injured at work, they got benefits based solely on the percentage of their injury and their earnings. Then after 1990, they split it into two types of benefits. One, they got amount for their injury if it was a permanent injury based on their age. And then the other one they got for loss of earnings benefits. This loss of earnings benefits ended at age 65. Now, the workers would get some money for retirement, but many advocates say it's not the same thing. So that's basically what me and Richard and Pam is here to today. Richard's beautiful assistant. No, I'm not hitting on you, Pam. um, is here to talk about the strike with us too. So take it away, Richard and Pam.
Yes, I want to talk about the strike briefly because when we left off last week, they were on a rotating strike. And then by Monday of this week, which would be, say, May the 25th, they went on a complete strike of all staff. One of the stories I heard yesterday was that one of the lawyers who works for the WSIB is now doing case management of for injured workers because they've got nobody handling the ship. The question was yesterday I had a call from an injured worker who's been waiting for physio for a very bad back sprain for the last 6 months. Finally, they sent her to the board's hospital at Toronto Western to have a look at her back. And the doctor said, yeah, physio would be a good idea. So she's waiting now for the WSIB to say to her, yes, we've cleared you for physio. Go and get it. We'll pay. And they're not calling her. So she's not getting the physio. And she was calling me. She's desperate for the physio. She doesn't have the money for the physio because the money she's getting from the WSIB is so low. She doesn't want to go out and borrow the money or put it on her credit card. And she's telling me, you, Mr. Fink, you go figure out how I can get my physio. And I'm telling her, WSIB's on strike. We can call them as you're calling them, and no one answers. And they're not answering my letters. Really, what she was looking for is there a way, Mr. Fink, you can just run to court and get an injunction causing the WSIB to provide needed medical care? And I was kind of abrupt with her by saying, no, I can't. But I'll give it back to you, Paul. It was really heartbreaking,
Yeah,
I guess, when I
I
started to think about it.
in the terms of what she's talking about as an injured worker, I feel her suffering, pain, and utter frustration. It's not that I'm angry with the staff at the WSIB because I've researched, they do have legitimate concerns. And many injured workers are going to get mad at me and they're going to say, what are you talking about? But in many terms, they're actually fighting for injured workers to provide a better service to them by having more staff so you're not waiting like this. But what comes to mind, as you know, Richard, would be to file a judicial review like injunction, writ of mandamus. But the problem is there's two problems. The first, most obvious one is who's going to pay? You know, as you know, as a lawyer, you're not talking cheap. Lawyers' fees, I remember that one case at the Court of Appeal where they upheld a lower court's decision for insurance bad faith, awarding $1.5 million in legal costs. And I just went, whoa, what? Oh my God, lawyers, oh my God, they're expensive. I got to be a lawyer. You know what I mean? So that is the biggest hurdle is the legal cost. And paying the lawyer like you to do that is just prohibitive. But then on top of that, what many people don't realize is if you win, okay, you pay it, but then you run the risk. If you lose, you have to pay your lawyer, but then you have to pay the WSIB's lawyer. Now, here's the irony of it all. This is what angers me with the system. The WSIB, as you never shut up about, Richard, is there to help injured workers. And how are they helping them when you're trying to get help? And then on top of that, they add insult to, pardon the pun, injury by then you having to pay their lawyer opposing you to get help. You know what I mean? So it is very frustrating. The only other thing I can think of, what I found sometimes helpful, was calling the president's office. You just call the main line and they'll say, well, can I help you? No, 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 no. I just want to speak to the president's office. And I used to, years ago, it was Mary Bond. That's She's like, hi, Paul, how are you? I'm like, oh, awesome, Mary, how are you? Great. Having problems? Oh, yeah, I've been waiting over a week to speak to my adjudicator. Okay, no problem. I'll get it. And then they would call, and she was amazing. And then she was replaced by two women who weren't as nice. And then, to my recollection, they got rid of that, the liaison officer to the president. Now it's just a director or somebody. So, I mean, I don't even know calling the president's office would work. Now, to my understanding, rumor has it, Pam has amazing experience in dealing with the WSIB with utmost professionalism and tact. See, I'm horrible at it, right?
So, Pam, where are you standing with contacting the WSIB at the moment?
Okay, so as of Monday, they are on a full strike. So when you try to call a case manager or the main line, you're not getting through. You can't leave a message for a case manager. It's an automated voicemail across the board that basically says they're on a work disruption. They're trying to triage stuff, but basically nothing's happening. You do have staff that is from the assistant directors up because they're not unionized, so they are still working. They are trying to do case management, but only for emergencies. So they're dealing with fatalities. They're saying that they're dealing with people who right now aren't being paid LOE, but they're doing it as a triage. So basically, the more you complain, the more likely you are. However, there's no way to contact these people. So essentially, unless you have a phone number to a manager, you're not getting through to anybody. We have some contact information for managers that I've been calling. It's taking them 3 to 4 days to get back to me. Right now, what we've been doing is we've been uploading letters, and then I'm keeping a list of all of the files. And then if I reach a manager, I'm trying to internally get them to give me contact information of other managers that are in fact working during the strike so that I can complain. But there is no movement right now with getting implementations completed. There's no movement in the payment department, which I've been complaining about because the payment department does have senior staff that should be approving stuff and they're still working, but it's not moving. There's also no movement on any sort of medication coverage or treatment being approved. Everything is pretty much at a standstill.
Wait, medication. I had a big fight, as Richard knows, and he was literally shaking his head, going, and I go, yeah, it's hilarious, isn't it? And the board, for some reason, started this policy. In my case, it was 2018, and they literally were not paying prescription medication that they had paid. In my case, I think it was for like 20 years or 15 years, whatever. And they said, well, it's your responsibility to get us the information to reapply every 2 years. And I'm like, they never quote a policy law or anything. Fast forward to like 3 weeks ago, and they said to me, or a month ago, and they said, no, that's not an issue anymore because I was appealing it. And they go, no, we don't do that anymore. We don't require any verification for medications. Now, opiates are different and other ones. I'm just talking general. And I was like, what was the change? And they wouldn't answer me. So what I was always told was when it comes to prescription medication, so long as your claim has been approved, you just take your prescription to the pharmacist, give them your claim number. So have they changed again, Pam? Do you know?
Yeah, they have changed. I don't know if it's changed on a case by case basis. I do know that the opioids is different. However, I
Yeah.
also know that there are circumstances where our clients will call us and say, I've had my medication covered for 3, 4 years, and now all of a sudden I went to the drugstore and it's not being covered. I will then contact the nurse consultant at the WSIB and say, why is this not being covered? And they'll say, oh, it expired and we should have sent a notice.
Hi, I just wanted to remind all our listeners that it's Injured Workers Day on Sunday, June the 1st. The one in Toronto is 11 o'clock at Queen's Park. It goes from 11 to 1. There's injured workers celebrations in Thunder Bay and other cities in Ontario. And to find out, if you go and Google Injured Workers Day Ontario, you'll get details of the four celebrations in different parts of the province. It's really important for injured workers to attend because it's a sign that injured workers are not a forgotten group and they have a right and they want to be heard. So we'll go back now to the strike issue. Paul, I cut you off a bit. What's up?
Well, that's okay. I never shut up, so it's good that people cut me off. Just to add to what you were just saying, I just changed my name in my video to the website where all the information is for June 1st event this year. In case people are listening audio, it's https://injuredworkersonline.org/June 1st 1st 2025. And they have all the information for this event as well as being able to sign a petition. Specifically, to add to what Richard said, there's an event in London, Ontario at Victoria Park, Northwest Corner, 11 a.m. Peterborough, north end of Millennium Park at noon. This is all on June 1st. Thunder Bay, their event is May 30th at City Hall, 10 a.m. And then, of course, Toronto at Queen's Park, 11 a.m. And then Windsor is, I can't say this, Ouellette and Tecumseh at 11 a.m. And all this information is on that webpage. Sorry, Richard, what were we getting to again? Oh, the strike. Yes, the lovely, lovely, lovely strike. I always love hearing strikes because I love how people's views literally diverse really bad. Like, I even hear from union members going, oh, they shouldn't be on strike. And I'm like, what? Are you crazy? People need to understand the reasons why people are striking. It's because it's their only option when the employer or business is refusing to work with them. That's the only option they have. And that goes back to the days of, I know I've studied too much labor stuff, goes back to the days of the Great Windsor Strike, where the Supreme Court Justice, I think his name was Justice Rand, came up with the Rand formula of recognizing unions and everything. And I remember they literally shut down the city of Windsor. It was that powerful. It's funny how we look today, and things have really changed in my view. Um, just hearing injured workers, and many were union members, and how they're opposed to this. I get, without a doubt, the frustration in the delays in the system. But what I would say is, don't blame the union members, blame the WSIB,
Yep.
the system, because they said, and Pam, you correct me if I'm wrong, same with you, Richard, that we will do our best to make sure nobody suffers through this strike, which that's a lie. I also wanted to add, Pam, as an injured worker, I have access to my online claim system. It's actually kind of really not that great as far as I'm concerned. Don't get me wrong, the IT staff and the leaps and bounds forward compared to 1997 or 1995 is great. I can see some of my claim information and I can message the WSIB, but that's only for injured workers. I do know that there was a big to do, or somebody said something that the board's going to start implementing a program for representatives to have access to things. So if that was the case, that might help that communication barrier that we're in right now. But unfortunately, it's not going to help reps. Some injured workers can try and message the WSIB through the system, but
We were going to talk about the age 65 matter today, but we're going to postpone it for a week or two. But one of the first points of appeal when I was doing the court appeal to stop the WSIB from cutting off injured workers at age 65 was to call the WSIB a statutory regime. In other words, it's part of a statute and it has legal obligations to follow Canadian law, such as the Charter of Rights, which says don't discriminate against certain groups, such as those over 65. And the court said it's not a statutory scheme, it's an insurance plan. And that's like You take out insurance, you agree that it's not going to pay you past 65. Well, that's the plan you've agreed to. If the insurance company goes on strike, well, that's the way it is. You know, the TTC goes on strike, city workers go on strike. So it's just another corporation that's subject to strikes and labor unrest. When in fact, as a statutory scheme, the person who's entitled to the physio and needs it badly, it's not an insurance plan. It's there to protect that person. It's there to help them. And it's statutorily there. And to me, I had it my way, and maybe this will come up on Injured Workers Day at the various protests, is the workers should be ordered back to work, and the WSIB's upper management should be replaced, and they should go to binding arbitration and get this thing done. In the meantime, get people like the one who called me into physio. So that would be my solution for this strike issue.
I tend to respectfully disagree to some degree, Richard, with that. I always get frustrated because when we deal with a strike, and it is, in my opinion, I would classify their services as, what do they call it with police and fire and that? Essential services. So yes, I do agree the strike should end. But why is it that the government, when they can order the work, why is it that they always have to order the workers back to work? Why can't they order the business to accept everything? You know what I mean? Like, do it that way. It was the employer that rejected the offers, to my understanding, not getting into the nuances of it. You know, the other point about what you were talking about, the WSIB being statutory, what I'd like to do too is compare it to Canada Pension Plan. It is administered by the government, but it's not taxpayer money. It is our money we contribute when we work, right? And I actually read in a book, I'm just looking to see if I can find it because I got too many legal books like you. And it was a charter constitutional law book. And this gentleman made this argument, like it was a paper, discussion paper, on what if CPP for some reason just stopped paying, just chose to, I don't like you, Richard, you're wearing glasses, I'm not going to pay you. And same with everybody. And he argued that using a writ of mandamus, judicial review, that you can compel the agency through a charter argument to pay, right? And you would, but the problem that we face in dealing with the courts, which I knew from day one, right, is that the courts seem to be not very educated in the workers' compensation system. Like they don't, or very biased. I'm not sure which. The one judge that I dealt with in Brampton, Justice LeMay, I had so much respect for him because he knew the system. He was a workers' compensation lawyer. It was funny because he actually knew both the witnesses, who one of them he socially seen. And I was like, oh. But we adjourned it and he wasn't the judge in the case. But my point is, I think that's one of the big problems with this whole thing, is that the workers' compensation system seems to be, for one weird reason, not relevant or not of interest. And I think that if injured workers are upset, or even reps like you, I think what they should do is get a hold of either Jamie West, NDP critic for the Ministry of Labor, or Lise Vaugeois, and sorry if I butcher her name, I'm terrible with names, she's the NDP critic for WSIB, and ask them to ask the Minister of Labor what the hell they're going to do about this strike. Because you have workers that are not getting the care that they need and not getting the money they need. And one important point, like in my file, I remember it was funny, it was ironic. A WSIB person actually said, let's make sure this worker gets the health care they need rather now than later, because if you don't treat an injury in a timely fashion, it can become permanent and devastating. And I think that's one thing.
All those people you mentioned, they're going to be at the Injured Workers Day rally on Sunday at 11 o'clock at Queen's Park. Historically, the critics, the labor critics for the opposing parties, and sometimes even the Minister of Labor will show up because it is now a recognized day by the Ontario Parliament. So let's leave the podcast and encourage all the people who've watched it. Please come to the rallies in your various geographic neighborhoods. So
Also,
Yeah,
thank you very much.
So,
One
sorry,
thing.
I'm going to interrupt one thing. It would also be nice to see any WSIB staff that's on strike to also stand with those injured workers to prove a point that it is they're dealing with stuff and they want to help these injured workers. They just need more from the WSIB.
Hopefully they'll be there too.
I will give credit to Fred Hahn. He's the president of CUPE or whatever, like the union above the union for the WSIB's union. He's always there that I've ever been there. He's been there and he's always speaks very passionate. He's
Yes,
a very
yes, I
passionate.
remember him speaking.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.